Okay, listen. What if the most dangerous prison is the one you can't see? Well, I was doom-scrolling some late-night psychology forums, those digital basements where the basementless gather, when I stumbled on the name Maxwell Maltz, a plastic surgeon, not a shrink, not a priest, not a monk, a man with a scalpel who accidentally discovered the mechanism behind human behavior by cutting flesh and watching people fail to transform. His patients changed their faces, but not their lives. Maltz started asking why. That question burned a hole in the wall between cosmetic surgery and psychology, and out of that hole came this book, Psycho-Cybernetics. It's not a book about success. It's a book about identity as a hallucination. And if you're still clinging to the idea that you are who you are, buckle up. We're about to raise your self-concept to the ground and build it back from ash and synapse. This is Chapter 1, the self-image. Before Maltz started talking to the public, he was slicing cartilage and reshaping noses for the elite and the desperate. People came in convinced their problems were anatomical. They were sure that once the mole was gone, once the ears lay flatter, once the scar was erased, they'd feel whole. Some of them did. Most didn't. Maltz began to notice a strange discrepancy. Some patients after surgery looked objectively better, but still saw the same old failures in the mirror. They acted like the nose was still crooked. They moved like the scar was still there. They reacted to life through a blueprint no longer visible. That's when he realized that people don't live through reality. They live through a self-image, an internal model of who they believe themselves to be. That image, whether accurate or not, becomes the architect of their behavior. Not the face, not the facts, the internal fiction. That's what shapes performance, emotions, success, failure, joy, misery. Every move a human makes is filtered through that lens. Think of the student who knows he's dumb at math. No matter how well he studies, he bombs the test. He has to. The self-image demands consistency. If he scored an A, his brain would implode. The salesman who believes he's just not good with people will find ways to ruin the deal even when the client is ready to buy. The woman who sees herself as unattractive will act invisible at the party, and when people ignore her, she'll use that as evidence that she was right. This is the vicious loop. Behavior confirms belief, which reinforces behavior. It doesn't matter if the initial belief is based on truth or fantasy. Once it settles in the self-image, it becomes gospel. This isn't some vague motivational fluff. This is mechanical. The same way a guided missile auto-corrects its course based on its programmed target, you auto-steer toward behaviors that keep your self-image intact. If that internal picture says I'm a loser, no success will be allowed to stick. If it says I'm unlovable, no affection will be trusted. You'll sabotage anything that threatens the consistency of that script. So here's the real black pill. You are hypnotized. Not metaphorically, literally. Maltz doesn't talk about hypnosis as a sideshow gimmick. He shows how belief, when held deeply enough, acts exactly like a hypnotic suggestion. If someone gets hypnotized and told they're blind, they won't see. If they're told they're weak, they can't lift. If they're told the room is cold, their body will react with shivers. And if you tell yourself over and over again that you're broken, inferior, unwanted, you will perform accordingly. You're not broken because it's true. You're broken because the suggestion took. The voice that told you who you are may not have been your own. It may have been your mother, a teacher, a bully, a boss, but you repeated it, and now it's carved into your circuitry like truth. It doesn't matter where it came from. It only matters that you believed it. Maltz called the self-image the face of personality. And just like your physical face, you can't see it directly. You only see its reflections, in reactions, in feedback, in failure loops. But unlike your physical face, this one can be reconstructed without surgery. The tool for that? What he called the theater of the mind. You sit back, close your eyes, and rerun the reels, not of your humiliations, not of your defeats, but of your best moments, your successes, the times you acted beyond your supposed limitations. You replay them until they become realer than the trauma loops. The theater of the mind isn't fantasy, it's synthetic experience. And the nervous system, bless its binary stupidity, cannot tell the difference between an actual memory and a vividly imagined one. That's the loophole. That's the crack in the matrix. He gives an example that's hard to forget. Patients who had undergone surgery, whose faces had changed dramatically, still felt the old defects. Just like amputees feel pain in a leg that no longer exists. The scar was gone, but the shame was still there, as if their minds had preserved a hologram of the old identity. They weren't seeing what was in the mirror. They were seeing what was in memory. They were being haunted by phantoms of themselves. This is what people don't get. It's not enough to change your circumstances. If you don't change your self-image, the phantom will drag you back. It'll talk you out of love. It'll talk you out of ambition. It'll whisper sabotage into every new chapter. And if you don't hear it clearly, you'll think it's just your voice. That's the cruelest part. The hypnotized never know they're under. And don't assume this only applies to people with trauma or visible scars. Maltz points out the epidemic of imaginary ugliness. Perfectly normal faces seen as grotesque by their owners. Girls who hate their bodies because they don't match some magazine's geometry. Men who see failure in the mirror because they haven't hit arbitrary success milestones. They live inside distortions, and their bodies become the scapegoats. They chase diets, surgeries, upgrades, thinking the problem is skin deep. It's not. The distortion is internal, and until the inner image changes, nothing they do will feel enough. Now here's the twist most readers miss. Maltz wasn't preaching motivational slogans. He was applying cybernetics, the science of feedback systems, to the psyche. He saw the human nervous system as a servo mechanism, like a self-steering missile, constantly course-correcting toward its internal target. The target is your self-image. The mechanism doesn't care if the target is healthy or self-destructive. It just obeys. That's why affirmations fail when they contradict the target. If the missile thinks it's aiming for failure, your motivational posters will get shot down by the system. You can't trick the mechanism with surface-level positivity. You have to change the target. So how do you change the target? Not with force, not with logic. The self-image isn't shifted by argument. It changes through experience. And if real-world experiences have been mostly failure and pain, then we manufacture new ones internally. Vivid, emotional, detailed synthetic experiences. You rehearse success, you imagine ease, you feel accomplishment before it happens. You reverse engineer memory. Because once you experience something, even synthetically, the self-image starts to adapt. It doesn't need convincing, it just needs data. Maltz makes a key distinction that flips the whole game, the difference between I failed at this and I am a failure. The first is descriptive. The second is a prison. Most people don't say I made a mistake. They say I am a mistake. This fusion of behavior and identity is the root of self-sabotage. But it's optional. It's a choice. Every child fails 1,000 times before walking. They don't label themselves. They just keep falling forward. But somewhere along the way, you began to judge your stumbles as evidence of your nature. You stopped adjusting your aim and started attacking your worth. That's not failure. That's identity collapse. If you take nothing else from this chapter, take this. The self-image sets the boundary of what is possible. Not your genetics, not your circumstances, your self-image. Change that and the system recalibrates. Talents emerge, confidence clicks into place. You begin to act in ways that feel weird at first, like wearing someone else's clothes, but soon you realize you were just finally growing into your own size. Maltz's patients didn't just need a new face, they needed a new blueprint, and so do you. The tragedy is that most people live their entire lives defending an identity they didn't consciously choose. They guard the bars of their own cage. They tell you who they are with pride. I'm just not a people person, or I've never been good at money, or I can't draw, as if these are stable truths, not old programming. Ask them where those beliefs came from, and they freeze. They don't know. They think the image is them. They never stop to ask, who installed this? And why am I still running it? This chapter is a scalpel, not a hug. Maltz wasn't trying to comfort. He was trying to cut out the cancer of passive identity. He wanted readers to stop being and start constructing, because identity isn't a truth. It's a system of stories and memories and permissions. It's clay. And if you keep calling the old sculpture me, you'll never pick up the knife. So let's end this chapter with a challenge. What if you're not who you think you are? What if the voice in your head is just a script? And what if right now, this very second, you could start writing a different one? Would you? Or are you too loyal to the fiction that's been killing you? You have a machine inside you. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but in the purest, most unflinching scientific sense. A servo mechanism. That's what cyberneticists called it when they first studied guided missiles and automatic control systems in the 1940s. That same tech birthed computers, satellites, thermostats, and Maltz realized by pure accident that it also explained human behavior. Your nervous system, when aimed correctly, functions with surgical precision. It's already doing it. Every time you reach for your keys, dodge a pothole, or solve a problem without knowing how you did it, the machine is at work. The issue isn't that it's broken, it's that most people feed it the wrong targets, then curse the system when it gives them exactly what they asked for. Cybernetics wasn't supposed to be a philosophical revolution. It was supposed to help war machines find their targets without human input. But here's where it gets weird. In building better machines, engineers accidentally mapped the secret design of the human psyche. Every servo mechanism requires a clear goal. It operates on feedback, data about the gap between where it is and where it wants to go. When the gap narrows, it self-corrects. That's not poetry. That's code. And it works whether you're launching a missile, playing a violin, or learning to love without self-sabotage. Right now, your brain is steering toward a destination. You might not know what it is. That doesn't matter. The system does. It's using everything you've told it, every belief, every memory, every emotional imprint to calculate your course. That means you're never really stuck. You're always in motion. The only question is, toward what? And here's the kicker. The mechanism doesn't ask if the target is healthy, empowering, or good for you. It just locks on. If the target is pain, rejection, or failure, because that's what you rehearse, it'll move toward that too. You've been lied to about laziness. People aren't lazy. Their servo mechanisms are just running perfectly toward low energy, low trust, low belief goals. The man lying on the couch, paralyzed by procrastination, is using his machine as effectively as an Olympian. He's just aimed at avoiding failure instead of pursuing success. His system is tracking for safety, not achievement. The mechanism obeys whatever you impress on it. If you tell it you're a burden, it'll steer you into isolation. If you tell it you're dangerous, it'll make sure you never risk intimacy. You are not malfunctioning. You're misaimed. Picture a missile. Once launched, it doesn't move in a straight line. It zigzags, adjusts, wobbles. It makes hundreds of micro errors per second. That's how it succeeds. The human equivalent is what you're doing right now, trying, missing, recalibrating. The mistake isn't the mistake. The mistake is quitting the second you detect deviation. The error is data. It's not judgment. It's fuel. But if your target is fear, if your goal is to avoid looking foolish, then every wobble feels like death and you freeze. That's what kills momentum. Not the miss, but the fear of the miss. The mechanism doesn't need instructions. It doesn't care about your to-do list. It needs one thing, a final picture, an end result, a sensory-rich image of the destination. That's how the subconscious operates. You feed it a clear visual of where you want to be, and it starts adjusting automatically. The problem is when you keep trying to figure out how you'll get there. That's not your job. That's the mechanism's job. Your obsession with the how is jamming the system. It's like typing while unplugging the keyboard every few seconds. Stop thinking of your subconscious as mystical. It's mechanical. It doesn't reason. It doesn't love you. It doesn't care about your dreams or your fears. It calculates based on input. That's all. You feel unlovable? It will deliver evidence. You feel like a winner? It will find ways to validate that too. But it won't override your dominant image. That's why affirmations alone don't work. If your dominant belief is "I suck," and you whisper "I am powerful" into the mirror, the machine detects a conflict. It reverts to its dominant code. Want to change it? Change the dominant signal, not the wallpaper. The system runs on stored memory. That includes real experiences, but also imagined ones. Your brain doesn't file them separately. A vivid synthetic experience can overwrite a weak real one. This is why visualization works. Not because of magic, but because the servo mechanism can't distinguish between fact and simulation. It learns from impact, not truth. So if you rehearse success with full emotion and detail, your system begins to expect success. And when it expects success, it behaves in ways that attract it. Your past doesn't limit you. Your replay settings do. You've been feeding it garbage. Every time you catastrophize, your system gets the signal. Program failure. Begin steering toward collapse. Every time you rehearse what you'll say when you lose, when they leave, when you blow it, your mechanism says, I see, that's our destination. And it starts helping you get there. It adjusts your tone, your decisions, your body language to match. The mechanism doesn't understand hope. It only understands specificity. You can't whisper dreams and shout doom. The loudest signal wins. You don't get what you want, you get what you target. And that means clarity matters more than positivity. Hope is vague. Targeting is ruthless. Do you want to be a writer? What kind? Who reads your stuff? What do they feel when they finish? Your mechanism can't act on fuzzy goals. It needs shape, texture, weight. Maltz makes it clear. The clearer the target, the sharper the behavior. Vague desires produce vague actions. Specific images create sharp, instinctive responses. The difference between I want to be successful and I see myself leading a creative team, publishing bold work that makes people feel alive, is the difference between a locked missile and a paper airplane. The system learns through mistakes. That's how it sharpens accuracy. It fails forward, just like you. If you deny yourself the right to miss, you're denying yourself the mechanism's core function, feedback correction. Perfectionism is anti-cybernetic. It's a denial of process. The irony is that people who need to be perfect are the ones least likely to improve because they never allow the system to calibrate. They're too busy punishing every wobble to notice the arc is tightening. And here's the cold law of the mechanism. It only works while you're in motion. No motion, no feedback. No feedback, no adjustment. No adjustment, no success. The number of people waiting for clarity before they move is staggering. They sit paralyzed, trying to map a course that can only reveal itself through action. The solution isn't certainty. The solution is movement. Action generates data. Data fuels the machine. You can't steer what isn't moving. You can't grow what isn't challenged. To operate this mechanism, you have to trust it. That means letting go of micromanagement, letting go of your obsession with results, letting go of the demand to see progress every day. Trust means allowing the machine to process in the background. You aim, you move, you adapt, but you don't grip. The second you grip, you restrict flow. This isn't mysticism, it's mechanics. You trust the brakes in your car, you trust the electricity in your house. Start trusting the machine wired into your spine. The mechanism does not care who you are. It doesn't care about your trauma, your story, your reasons, your justifications, your excuses. It has one rule: give it a target and it will get to work. If you feed it garbage, it will produce garbage. If you feed it power, it will produce power. But it's not sentimental. It doesn't reward victims or punish sinners. It simply follows instructions. You are not at war with your mind. You are driving a machine that responds to programming. Change the code or stay where you are. Imagination isn't play. It's machinery. Most people think it's where you go to escape reality, but Maltz is saying it's where reality is built. You don't act according to what's real. You act according to the image you hold inside your head. The servo mechanism doesn't ask whether what you imagine is true. It just takes the picture and starts adjusting your behavior, physiology, confidence, and perception to match. So if you're feeding it fantasies of collapse, humiliation, chaos, then your body will move like you're living it, because you are, not in the outer world, but in the one that governs it. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between an actual experience and a vividly imagined one. That's not philosophical, that's biological. Imagine biting into a lemon, your mouth waters. Watch a scary movie, your heart races. Have a dream about falling, your whole body jolts awake. This is already happening. The mechanism doesn't ask questions. It doesn't check for proof. It reacts, which means you've been reprogramming your own hardware every day accidentally. If you really understood that, you'd be terrified of your own mind. Or maybe finally you'd take the wheel. Athletes visualize the perfect jump. Soldiers rehearse missions in their minds before they ever land in the field. Musicians mentally practice finger movements while sitting in silence. None of that is imaginary. Mental rehearsal activates the same neural circuits as physical action. The difference is only volume, not type. So when you spend an hour replaying a social humiliation, the body interprets that loop as real. It adapts. You stiffen up next time. You avoid eye contact. You start performing anxiety, and eventually you become what you practiced being. The brain stores emotion, not truth, and what it stores most powerfully is emotionally charged imagery. That's why your worst moments are seared into you with such high-definition detail. Imagination provides an emotional jolt strong enough to encode new beliefs. That means what you feel while imagining matters more than what you say. I'm confident means nothing if you're flat. But imagine confidence. See it, feel it, move with it, and your nervous system leans toward it like a magnet. The old loops begin to degrade. They rot in disuse, because now the machine has fresher footage. Repetition wires circuitry. There are studies, hard data, on athletes who improve their performance without touching the field, just by imagining the reps in exact detail. The muscles twitch, the body prepares, skill sharpens without a single external movement. That's the secret. The mind can train the machine without physical input. The servo mechanism doesn't wait for external validation. If the signal is vivid enough, it updates the system. Every person you've called naturally talented is running software they installed on purpose or inherited without questioning. Talent isn't born, it's rehearsed. This is where it gets dark, because the same system that builds Olympic-level confidence also builds chronic fear. Most people are elite visualizers of disaster. They've practiced every possible rejection, failure, betrayal. They are masters at seeing everything going wrong. They run simulations that paralyze them. They walk into conversations already imagining them ending in shame. Their systems prepare for rejection. And when rejection doesn't come, they often sabotage until it does, just to make the prediction feel accurate. This is how imagination becomes prophecy. You are moving toward whatever image you hold most vividly. It doesn't matter what you say out loud. The body follows the internal blueprint. If that blueprint says you're weak, then even strength feels off-brand. If it says you're a failure, then success feels like an error to be corrected. So you correct it by messing up, by shrinking, by pulling back just when things were about to get real. People call it self-sabotage, but it's actually self-consistency. The mechanism always steers back to the dominant image. Always. Fantasies are easy. They're sugar. They make you feel good for a second, but they're weightless. They don't move the machine. Functional images are different. They're specific, alive, and tied to action. It's the difference between I want to be successful and I see myself walking onto a stage, delivering a talk, seeing the front row locked in, eyes wide. Fantasies entertain. Functional images inform the system. Most people think they're visualizing, but they're actually dissociating. Escaping, playing movies with no budget, no actors, no script, then wondering why nothing changes. You've got a theater running in your skull, and you're the projectionist. The screen plays 24/7. Most people never question what's on. They let old reels run. Trauma, defeat, shame. They rewatch the worst moments without noticing. It becomes normal, comfortable even. They decorate their prison with nostalgia. But the machine doesn't know it's a rerun. It treats every screening as new data. That means the theater must be managed. Actively, like a studio. You direct, you cast, you rewrite. Otherwise, you're just another actor trapped in someone else's bad script. Your past doesn't vanish, but it can be overridden. Imagination is how you do it. When you create new imagery that contradicts the old, your system starts to hesitate. It can't run both at full power. It has to choose. That's how old identities fade, not through erasure, but through obsolescence. You drown the old footage in new scenes, you feed the mechanism more powerful, more consistent inputs, and eventually, the old loops lose grip. They become silent, irrelevant. Their command over your behavior withers. The system doesn't update through evidence. It updates through experience. And experience can be synthetic. That's where the as-if principle comes in. If you act as if you are confident, the servo mechanism interprets that behavior as evidence. If you visualize success, even while doubting, you're supplying fuel. It's not lying, it's programming. Over time, the acting becomes real. The machine integrates it. Identity catches up. The mind doesn't need proof, it needs patterns. And if you repeat a pattern long enough, the machine calls it truth. Success visualization creates real-world results. Not because of magic, but because it alters behavior. When you see yourself winning, you start walking straighter, speaking clearer, taking more risk. That creates tiny wins. The wins create feedback. The feedback confirms the image. The loop tightens. You build belief in reverse, from action to confirmation to identity. And it all starts with image. If you try to act bold while imagining failure, the dissonance kills momentum. But when the image aligns with the act, the system flows like electricity through wet stone. You're using imagination right now. You used it before you opened your eyes this morning. Before you said your first word, you used it to scare yourself, shrink yourself, doubt yourself. That's the bad news. The good news is you can aim it. This isn't about creativity, it's about control. Most people walk through life carrying a loaded mental weapon pointed at their own skull. Maltz is saying, stop firing it blindly. Pick a target, aim it with intention. Because imagination isn't a toy. It's a trigger. You're hypnotized. Right now. You've just been in it so long you call it your personality. Hypnosis doesn't always look like stage tricks or swinging pendulums. It can look like a kid being told you're not smart enough. A teen hearing people don't like you. A failure that lands so hard it echoes into identity. You agreed with it. You accepted the suggestion. And from that moment forward, your servo mechanism began responding to a command you didn't even realize you gave it. That's how deep this runs. You're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to conditioning. Most of the beliefs holding people back are old suggestions that slipped in through the cracks. A teacher made a sarcastic comment. A parent snapped in anger. A friend betrayed you once. That moment lit the fuse. But the real damage happened later, when you started repeating it to yourself. The original voice faded, but your version took over. You built a belief around it. You reinforced it with every minor failure. And now it feels like truth. That's how programming works. The source disappears, the effect sticks. A single mistake becomes a permanent label. One public embarrassment, and suddenly you just aren't good with people. One heartbreak, and now you're unlovable. These aren't facts. They're conclusions drawn from pain. But the servo mechanism doesn't evaluate logic. It obeys vivid inputs. And pain is vivid. So your body adjusts, your habits bend, your self-image locks in around a lie, and your behavior begins to protect it. You don't try anymore. You don't speak up. You don't get close. You start building your life around an error message. Beliefs don't stay in the mind, they colonize the body. Think you're weak, your posture collapses. Think you're unsafe, your muscles tighten, your eyes dart, your breath shortens. You live in defense mode. You walk like someone who expects to be hit. The system adapts to the script. Every movement broadcasts the belief. Your nervous system enforces it like law. And since your external experience reflects back your behavior, the world seems to confirm the original lie. This is how biology becomes belief's puppet. Learned helplessness isn't natural, it's installed. Psychologists found that animals exposed to inescapable pain stop trying to escape, even when the cage door is later left open. That's how most people live. They've tried, they've failed, they've internalized failure as identity. So they stop acting, they don't see the open door, or worse, they see it but assume it's a trap. That isn't realism, that's trance. They're hypnotized into their own cage. And they'll defend it with everything they've got, because it feels safer than uncertainty. You don't fight a trance with force, you dissolve it with light. The second you expose the belief to scrutiny, it begins to wobble. You trace it to its origin, you notice how long ago it formed, you see how outdated it is, you catch it in contradiction, you start gathering new evidence. And the servo mechanism, being a feedback system, can't ignore data forever. It starts updating, not instantly, but slowly, error by error, until the old command loses grip. Most of your limiting beliefs were written by a child version of you. A version with no context, no language, no distance. That version experienced rejection and interpreted it as total inadequacy. It experienced confusion and labeled it stupidity. And then it repeated those thoughts until they solidified. But that child isn't here anymore. You've grown. You've gained experience. You've survived things the younger you couldn't have imagined. Yet the belief remains. Because no one told your system that the version who installed it is gone. Your subconscious still thinks you're that scared kid. It doesn't know how old you are now. It doesn't know how capable you've become. So it reacts to adult challenges with childhood scripts. You shrink, freeze, self-destruct. Not because you're weak, but because the operating system is outdated. You need to reintroduce yourself to yourself. Hey, I'm not 7 anymore. I can handle this. I have evidence. I have agency. That's how dehypnosis begins, by bringing the system back to the present. Shyness, aggression, self-deprecation. People call these personality traits. Most of the time, they're just survival strategies. Scripts written to avoid shame, rejection, or pain. You act arrogant because you were ignored. You act passive because you were punished for speaking up. These aren't traits, they're protections. Layers you've wrapped around the false belief to shield it from exposure. Personality becomes armor. But underneath it, the real self is still intact, just buried under layers of outdated defense mechanisms. You don't need to win arguments against the belief. You need to drain its power, neutralize it, show it where it came from, show how it hasn't predicted your life accurately. Ask, is this useful? That question alone begins to break the trance. If a belief isn't helping you move toward what you value, it's junk code. You don't need to fight it, just stop running it. Your nervous system is hungry for better input. Feed it. Beliefs are not fixed, they're modular. You can rewrite them, but only if you stop treating them like sacred truths. Your servo mechanism updates automatically when it gets new input, especially when that input comes from action. Don't wait until you believe in yourself. Do something different. Act without the belief. Let the new behavior send the update. The system responds to proof, not promises. It doesn't care what you say. It learns from what you do. You don't need to become someone new. You were enough before the lie. The programming came later. The trance came later. All dehypnosis does is strip away the distortion. It brings you back to neutral, back to baseline, back to who you were before the world convinced you to shrink. The self isn't something you build, it's something you uncover. You're not here to invent a new identity. You're here to wake up from the false one. Emotion strikes first, but that doesn't mean it's right. It's fast because it's ancient. It evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you accurate. So when your heart races before the call, or your chest tightens in the meeting, or your stomach flips after one critical glance, it doesn't mean you're in danger. It means your system has fired based on old data. Rational thinking is what steps in next. Not to kill the feeling, but to interpret it. It says, wait, is this real? Is this useful? That pause is evolution catching up with itself. You are not your first emotional reaction. You are what you do next. Most people never get past the first surge. They feel anxiety and assume something's wrong. They feel doubt and think it's a prophecy. But that first signal isn't a command, it's a flare. You can observe it, hold it, let it burn out, and once the flash fades, you can choose a better move. This isn't about ignoring instinct. It's about not becoming its hostage. Feelings are loud liars. They arrive with urgency, dressed in certainty, wearing the mask of truth. But they're often built on beliefs you never examined. You feel like you're going to fail? That's just your system protecting a belief that says success is unsafe. You feel unworthy? That's your servo mechanism referencing bad code. Emotions are only as trustworthy as the story they're built on. If the story is trash, the feeling is theater. Every thought that crosses your mind should be treated like a stranger at the door. Who sent you? Why are you here? What are you selling? Is this even real? Maltz wanted people to become mental interrogators, not cruel, not aggressive, but relentless. When a thought like, "I'll probably blow this," shows up, you don't argue with it emotionally. You put it on the stand and cross-examine it. Most of the time, it folds like paper under a heat lamp. You don't need an office or a therapist to do this. You can become your own debugger. Every time you notice a thought dragging you down, slow it down, strip it bare, and ask if it belongs. That's rational self-therapy. And with every session, the system updates. The loop gets cleaner, the signal sharpens, and over time, the voice in your head starts sounding less like a tyrant and more like a strategist. You're arguing with ghosts. That's what most anxiety is. Mental fencing matches with imaginary critics, fake futures, misremembered failures. You're replaying conversations that didn't happen, defending choices no one questioned, pre-losing opportunities that haven't arrived. Rational thinking grabs you by the collar and pulls you back into the present. It shows you the room, the desk, the keyboard, the breath, the only battlefield that actually exists. Your imagination is brilliant, but without rational editing, it turns on you. Just because something appears in high resolution doesn't mean it's real. That mental movie of you crashing, stuttering, being rejected, that's just a file. You don't have to stream it. You can close the tab. Rationality isn't anti-imagination. It's the director. It decides what gets filmed, what gets cut, and what gets archived under no longer useful. The servo mechanism operates best on clean data. When you use reason to define your goals, to challenge internal noise, to correct distorted memories, the machine responds with sharpness. It stops guessing. It starts guiding. But if you feed it chaos, vague fears, unresolved grudges, half-truths, it malfunctions. Rational thinking is system hygiene. You want results? Clean your inputs. Don't feed a rocket coordinates to nowhere. This isn't about suppressing emotion. Suppression just delays the explosion. What Maltz is offering is interpretation. You feel scared? Fine. But is it useful? Does it mean stop or does it mean stretch? Does it warn you or does it trap you? Rationality doesn't erase feeling, it decodes it. That's what makes it powerful. You can cry and still speak clearly. You can feel doubt and still walk forward. That's not numbness, that's control. There's a you behind all of this, the thoughts, the moods, the chaos. You're the observer. You're the one who sees the storm, not the storm itself. Rational thinking is how you reclaim that seat. It's how you move from being the panicked passenger to the one holding the wheel. When you can watch your thoughts without being dragged by them, you've stopped being prey. You've started being present. Programming doesn't require inspiration, it requires precision. When you apply rational thinking to your internal code, you're doing more than just cleaning up your mind. You're retooling your mechanism. You're aligning imagination with intention, emotion with direction, belief with action. This isn't about being clinical, it's about being accurate. Maltz didn't want robots, he wanted pilots. And a pilot doesn't fly by feelings alone. They check the instruments. They course correct and they fly anyway. Trying too hard jams the gears. The people who fail the most catastrophically are often the ones clenching the hardest. They're over-efforting, over-analyzing, over-directing. The very act of trying becomes a form of resistance. You can't shoot a free throw while thinking about your elbow. You can't give a speech while monitoring your tone mid-sentence. The moment you obsess about the outcome, you disrupt the execution. The success mechanism is like a self-driving car. Punch in the coordinates, then stop grabbing the wheel every 5 seconds. The success mechanism isn't magic, it's automation. It doesn't need to be micromanaged. It's built to execute in the background while your conscious mind does other things. Your conscious brain decides where to go. Your unconscious brain figures out how. That's the contract. When you keep poking at it, tweaking mid-process, second-guessing every frame, you're violating the contract. The system was working, you just didn't trust it long enough to see the result. This is where most people get scrambled. They try to execute with the conscious mind. But the conscious mind isn't built for precision under pressure. It's built for strategy, intention, and reflection. Performance happens elsewhere. Once you decide to speak, throw, move, build, you hand it off. You don't need to rehearse the swing in mid-swing. You need to swing. The conscious mind sets the destination. The unconscious handles the steering. That's the split. Cross the wires and you crash. Flow can't be forced. It emerges when the conscious mind steps aside and lets the body run the code it's already written. That's when athletes say time slows down, when musicians forget they're playing, when speakers forget the script and start speaking from something deeper. You don't access flow by clenching, you access it by loosening. The paradox is that to perform at your peak, you have to disappear. Not vanish, but dissolve into the moment so fully there's no more commentary, just signal, just now. Tension is urgency with no aim. You think it means you're serious. You think it means you're focused. It actually means you're choking the process. Tension narrows your field of vision. It tightens your muscles. It floods your bloodstream with panic and noise. And the mechanism doesn't operate under pressure. It thrives under clarity. You're not holding up a skyscraper. You're guiding a system that wants to help. But you have to let it breathe. Watch a child learning something new. They don't white-knuckle their way through it. They play, they explore, they stumble, laugh, try again. No panic, no obsession, just curiosity and movement. That's how the mechanism learns best. The minute you bring in stakes and shame, the system locks. Artists, athletes, inventors, they all know this. When you're in play mode, your skill flows naturally. When you're in prove yourself mode, you glitch. The goal isn't to be casual, it's to be absorbed. Trust is performance fuel. It doesn't mean hoping everything works out. It means knowing the system's already been trained, knowing that the reps you put in have weight. When you trust, you stop looking over your own shoulder. You stop rerunning the tape mid-act. Trust says, I've done the work. Now I let the machine do its thing. Doubt inserts static. Doubt fractures the signal. Trust is the cleanest frequency. And the mechanism responds to clean frequencies like a compass snapping north. Letting go is the opposite of giving up. Giving up says, this doesn't matter. Letting go says, I've aimed, now I release. It's an act of strength. You walk into the room, speak the truth, send the email, launch the offer, and then you leave it. You don't stalk the results. You don't dissect every heartbeat of response. You move again. Letting go is the highest form of confidence. It tells the system, I trust you to deliver while I keep showing up. Rest isn't absence, it's programming. While you sleep, your brain is sorting inputs, connecting dots, reinforcing pathways. The same applies to moments of detachment, a walk, a long shower, a day away from the grind. You think you're doing nothing, but your mechanism is stitching together skill, integrating, repairing, optimizing. Most breakthroughs don't come from grinding, they come from stepping back just long enough for the pattern to emerge. Relaxation isn't a vibe, it's a weapon. It's trainable, it's repeatable, it's what allows the system to work at full capacity without short-circuiting from overload. When you can summon a state of calm, confident readiness, the servo mechanism lights up. It pulls from memory, it tracks the goal, it fires, without stress tripping the circuit. That's not mystical, that's design. Your best performances won't come from strain, they'll come from rhythm, looseness, and total trust in the system you built. Happiness isn't magic. It's a mechanical outcome. Maltz dismantles the idea that joy is reserved for the lucky or the enlightened. According to the system, happiness is simply what happens when your servo mechanism is working well, when your thoughts align with your values, when your goals are clearly defined, when your inner scripts aren't sabotaging your momentum. It's not a reward for performance. It's a signal that the engine is firing correctly. You don't wait for it. You tune for it. There's a corrosive belief in human culture that joy must be earned. like there's some spiritual invoice you need to pay before you're allowed to laugh freely. But this chapter cuts that down. Maltz insists that happiness doesn't require permission. It's not a moral trophy. You don't have to fix everything first. You don't have to solve the world's pain. You don't have to suffer enough to justify feeling okay. You just have to stop resisting the state your system wants to default to when you stop poisoning it. The nervous system favors repetition. Whatever emotion you return to most often becomes home base. Whether that's irritation, resignation, or lightness, it becomes the baseline your system tries to maintain. You might think you're just reacting to life, but more often than not, you're repeating a practiced emotional groove. Rehearsed pain, rehearsed guilt, rehearsed cynicism. And once it's locked in, it feels like personality. But it's not. It's just inertia with a story. Every mood is a micro-rehearsal. Laugh, and you strengthen your capacity to enjoy things. Dwell in bitterness, and you reinforce the habit of expecting the worst. Your emotional responses are not isolated events. They're performances. And the more you perform something, the easier it becomes to perform again. Most people rehearse misery without realizing it. They think they're venting, processing, or being real. But what they're actually doing is feeding the servo mechanism a script it's getting better at executing. You can't always control the events, but you always control the framing. That's where happiness lives. In the split second after the stimulus, in the question, what does this mean? One person loses a job and sees freedom. Another sees evidence of their worthlessness. The circumstance is neutral. The mind is not. Happiness isn't about pretending things are good. It's about seeing that you get to choose what anything means. That choice point, that's your superpower. Most people build happiness like a finish line. Once I'm successful, once I'm in love, once they see me. And because the goalpost is always ahead, the system never stabilizes. It never performs well because it's running on emptiness. Maltz flips that model completely. Happiness isn't the result of success. It's the precondition. When you learn to access joy now, even partially, you feed the system energy, clarity, resilience. That's when the results come. And when they do, they're easier to hold. Joy isn't soft, it's efficient. A happy mind is streamlined. It doesn't waste energy on doubt spirals or self-flagellation. It's clear, focused, ready. When you're in that mode, creativity flows faster. Communication sharpens. You take more risk, you recover quicker. People underestimate the practicality of happiness. It's not a luxury emotion, it's a productivity tool. It's the grease that keeps the machine from grinding itself into burnout. Chronic unhappiness is often a script running on autopilot, the martyr complex, the misunderstood genius, the tragic soul. These aren't conditions, they're roles. Roles people play for attention, control, or a sense of identity. But once you see the script, you don't have to keep acting in it. Misery only has power when you believe it's justified. Start watching it like an old movie you've already seen too many times. You don't need to destroy it. Just stop giving it 5 stars. Bitterness corrodes the internal system. It doesn't just hurt psychologically, it burns energy. It clouds thinking. It narrows focus. Forgiveness isn't about absolving others. It's about clearing out emotional malware so your mechanism can process new data. Every grudge is a file running in the background, draining performance. Letting go doesn't mean the past didn't happen. It means you're choosing not to keep reliving it with interest. Choosing happiness isn't a one-time revelation. It's 100 tiny corrections a day, like pulling your shoulders back, like adjusting your breathing. It's a decision you make when the reflex wants to slide back into bitterness or panic. It takes repetition, discipline, self-awareness. But like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Eventually, choosing happiness stops being an effort and starts becoming your baseline operating system. This is construction, not magic, not waiting. You build joy the same way you build strength, through reps, through consistency, through pushing back against the emotional gravity of your old habits. The more you train the system toward gratitude, levity, openness, the more those circuits light up automatically. This isn't fake positivity, it's emotional engineering. Maltz isn't telling you to smile through pain. He's showing you how to build a mechanism that doesn't collapse under pressure. One that runs on lightness instead of fear. One that makes happiness a feature, not a fluke. Personality isn't fixed. That myth belongs in the same graveyard as phrenology and leeches. You're not stuck with some default character setting like a broken clock. Maltz flips the whole game. Personality is built, programmed, updated like software. The system you call me is running loops, and those loops were written by experience, reaction, decision, and most of them can be rewritten with effort and repetition. The personality you operate from today is just a lagging indicator of your most practiced traits. There's no single trait that makes a success personality. It's a formula: self-confidence, self-respect, self-acceptance, purpose, creativity, adaptability, resilience. These aren't add-ons, they're interlocking parts. Confidence without purpose is arrogance. Creativity without resilience is chaos. Acceptance without respect becomes passivity. These elements form a system that, once integrated, operates almost automatically. The composite matters more than any one ingredient. Confidence isn't loud. It's quiet certainty that you can figure things out. It doesn't come from positive thinking, it comes from proof. Small wins, attempts, misses and recoveries. The servo mechanism builds expectation from experience. When you show yourself you can do something hard, even a little, the system stores that. Do it again, stack it. Eventually it becomes instinct. Confidence is the memory of competence. You build it one deliberate rep at a time. Self-respect isn't a feeling, it's a pattern of behavior. It's knowing that you do what you say, that you follow through even when no one's watching. It's earned through alignment, not morals, consistency. When your actions match your internal code, the system stabilizes. There's no internal static, no double signals. You don't need applause, you just need to respect the person in the mirror enough to not keep breaking your own rules. You cannot run a high-performance system on self-loathing, period. Self-acceptance isn't indulgence, it's operational necessity. It means you stop wasting energy on internal war. It means you stop apologizing for existing. That doesn't mean you stop evolving, it means you stop trying to become someone else. Once the system accepts its own foundation, it can start building. Without that, you're stuck patching cracks instead of rising. Purpose is jet fuel. It gives the system a destination that makes the trip worth it. Without purpose, you can achieve everything and still feel hollow. Purpose isn't about grand visions, it's about alignment. Are you moving in a direction that matters to you, that sharpens you, that contributes something you value? When you have that, your actions get pulled instead of pushed. You move without dragging yourself. That's efficiency. Creativity isn't artistic flair, it's mental fluidity. It's the ability to break your own pattern, invent a new one, and keep moving. Success personalities don't just think outside the box, they question whether the box was ever necessary. They aren't afraid of uncertainty because they've rehearsed adaptation. Creativity is what happens when you stop demanding control and start collaborating with reality. It's not about talent, it's about flexibility. Resilience is the ability to bend without snapping. It's built through recovery, not from avoiding pain, but by experiencing it and moving anyway. The servo mechanism learns what to expect. So if you consistently respond to setbacks with curiosity and motion, the system stops fearing failure. It starts expecting bounce back. That changes everything. You don't become bulletproof, you become regenerative. And that's a different kind of strength. Eventually, all of this becomes autopilot. You rehearse it enough and the system stops asking. It just fires. Confidence becomes default. Creativity becomes response. You don't have to think, how do I act like a leader? You just lead. That's what a success-type personality actually means. Not pretending, not forcing. It's when positive traits stop being something you do and start being who you are by default. Approval addiction breaks the machine. If you're still tuning your self-worth to someone else's reaction, you're running corrupted software. Success types don't crave applause, they crave alignment. That doesn't mean they're immune to praise or criticism. It means they don't need it to function. Their standard is internal. That clarity frees the mechanism to work without static. You're not supposed to be universally liked. You're supposed to be real. Your thought habits build your personality. Every internal monologue writes code. If your default reaction is blame, fear, or doom-scrolling failure fantasies, then you're rehearsing that into your identity. But if your default shifts toward curiosity, ownership, solutions, that writes a different program. You are not what you think. You are what you repeatedly think. And that repetition forms the grooves your personality runs along. A success personality treats mistakes like training footage. There's no identity hit, just feedback. You did something that didn't work. Good, that's data. Extract it, adjust, move again. This neutral thinking keeps momentum alive. It keeps confidence intact even when the outcome isn't ideal. Success types don't collapse because something went sideways. They log it, recalibrate, and go again with sharper vision. Error isn't threat, it's signal. Act like the person you want to become, not in grand gestures, in small repetitions. Show up early, follow through, speak with clarity, set boundaries. The servo mechanism will catch on. Eventually, the behaviors you rehearsed enough start feeding back into the self-image. You don't fake it, you install it. Action reprograms identity faster than affirmation ever could. Want to feel like a success? Start acting like you deserve the upgrade. Rigidity snaps, flexibility bends and bounces. The success-type personality isn't robotic, it's dynamic. It knows how to shift gears without abandoning purpose. It doesn't panic when the plan changes. It adapts because it trusts the system underneath. Fragility breaks at change. Flexibility absorbs it. Your power isn't in holding the line, it's in being able to redraw it mid-battle and keep moving forward. Whether you realize it or not, you're building a personality every day. Every reaction is a vote. Every thought is a brick. Most people are constructing themselves by accident, stacking traits without thinking about what kind of system they're assembling. But Maltz shows you can build one on purpose. You can decide what traits deserve rehearsal. You can edit the code. You can train the machine. Success doesn't happen to a type. It happens through a system that's been built to sustain it. Failure isn't a verdict, it's a signal. It's the result of the system misfiring, not some cosmic judgment on your worth. Most people treat failure like identity. They tattoo it on their self-image. But in cybernetic terms, failure is nothing more than deviation, a missed target, a wrong input. The servo mechanism isn't trying to destroy you. It just followed instructions, bad ones. When the missile goes off course, you don't scream at it. You adjust it. Same applies here. You failed? Cool. That means the system is still active. Now give it something better to work with. The system can't tell if the goal is healthy, realistic, or destructive. It just moves toward whatever picture dominates your mental screen. That's the problem. If your goal is to avoid embarrassment, it'll aim for invisibility. If your dominant image is, "I always mess this up," then the system helps you mess it up. It's obedient, not wise. This is why self-sabotage feels so sneaky. It's not sabotage at all. It's perfect execution of a terrible instruction. It's success at failing. Fear and guilt distort the signal. They flood the mechanism with noise. The servo system needs clarity. Fear muddies that. Anxiety adds panic to precision work. Guilt weighs down every motion with moral hesitation. These states don't motivate better behavior. They paralyze performance. When the system is jittery, it starts overcorrecting, overthinking, second-guessing. That's when performance goes sideways. The solution isn't to crush fear. It's to quiet the signal so the system can hear again. Perfectionism is sabotage dressed as ambition. It demands a target so narrow, so unrealistic, that the system has no chance of hitting it. And when it misses, it doesn't learn. It implodes. The failure isn't treated as a calibration. It's treated as proof of inadequacy. This loops endlessly. You aim for flawless. You fall short. You panic. You retreat. The system gets trained to fear feedback. It starts avoiding all action just to avoid that moment of disappointment. That's not discipline, that's paralysis in a tuxedo. Self-punishment doesn't correct the machine, it corrupts it. Every time you punish yourself for a miss, you train the system to fear trying. Shame teaches the servo mechanism to associate effort with pain, and once that link is strong enough, your own internal processor starts rejecting movement. Why fire up the engine if it always ends in self-destruction? You're not building accountability. You're engineering shutdown. Your pal. Replaying your failures over and over doesn't build insight. It builds circuitry. Regret loops etch the failure deeper into the system. Every time you revisit that one humiliation or mistake, you're telling the mechanism, "This is who I am, build more of this." The past becomes predictive, not because it should be, but because you keep feeding it back in. The system believes whatever it's told most often. If you want a different output, stop submitting the same file. Failure, like anything else, becomes habitual. If your daily patterns involve avoiding challenges, procrastinating until panic, or framing every problem as impossible, then your system starts defaulting to that posture. The servo mechanism isn't judging you. It's updating. It's writing new defaults based on repeated actions. The more you behave like someone who fails, the more you feel like one. And the more you feel like one, the more your actions bend in that direction. It loops until you break it. You can't disable what you won't name. Recognizing the failure mechanism at work is the first fracture in its control. Catch yourself mid-spiral, mid-flinch, mid-narrative. Say it aloud. This is the failure mechanism activating. Label the thought, the posture, the emotional script. It sounds simple, but it works because it pulls you out of identification and into observation. From there, you can choose again. The moment you see the gears, you're no longer caught in them. Movement kills the loop. You can't overthink while in motion. You might try, but the body reclaims attention. Even a small step, an email, a call, a 5-minute sketch, interrupts the rhythm of collapse. It gives the mechanism new data, new feedback. That's what recalibrates it. Thought won't do it. Journaling won't do it. Not alone. You've got to move. Movement doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to break the pattern long enough for the system to reboot. Stop treating every mistake like a moral failure. It's not personal, it's mechanical. You missed the mark. That means you now know more than you did before. Feed that back into the mechanism. Use it. Learn how it misread the terrain, how it misjudged the velocity, how it needs new targeting parameters. The failure mechanism becomes the teacher if you stop seeing it as the enemy. Turn every error into raw input. Rewire the system mid-flight. You don't need to overhaul your soul. You don't need to become a new person. You just need a better aim. Most self-help fails because it tries to rebuild identity from scratch. That's unnecessary. The servo mechanism is already wired. It just needs a clear, compelling target. Pick one that matters. Even if it's small, even if it's close. The system doesn't care how noble it is. It just needs coordinates that don't sabotage your internal drive. Failure isn't your enemy, it's your raw material. Used properly, it sharpens aim, tightens feedback, builds tolerance, triggers upgrades. The failure mechanism isn't broken, it's misdirected. Once you see that, you can repurpose it. Every crash becomes data. Every misstep becomes insight. You stop fearing error, you start listening to it. Maltz doesn't want you to eliminate failure, he wants you to weaponize it. Emotional scars aren't metaphors, they're structural. They're the psychological version of a limp, a crooked nose, a jaw that won't fully open. You don't see them in the mirror. You feel them in how you flinch before trusting, how you brace before speaking, how you assume rejection before it's spoken. These aren't moods, they're distortions etched into the nervous system. The servo mechanism adapts to them, protects them, routes behavior around them like exposed wiring. And the longer they sit unexamined, the more invisible they become, until you call them personality. Trauma isn't just remembered, it gets embedded. The system reads the emotional pain and recalibrates its entire threat model around it. You touched fire, so now you fear warmth. You got hurt once, so now every smile looks suspicious. That's not caution, that's programming. The system doesn't differentiate between past and present, it operates on vividness. So if that memory still holds charge, it's still directing traffic in your life. One event doesn't create the scar, it's the mental replays that do the damage. Every time you revisit the moment with the same emotional narrative, you deepen the groove, you confirm the meaning, you harden the reaction. The scar isn't the event, it's the interpretation, fossilized by repetition. Eventually, your responses become reflexes. You don't choose them, they fire before thought. and then you wonder why the same things keep happening. It's not fate, it's rehearsal. The system doesn't ask whether the input is physical or emotional. It just adjusts. If the message was "I'm not good enough," then the mechanism will start shaping goals, actions, and posture around that assumption. The self-image warps to accommodate the wound. You stop aiming high, you stop speaking up, you overcompensate, or you vanish. And the worst part, it starts to feel natural, like you were always this way. You weren't. You adapted to the injury. Scarred systems overcorrect. You don't just become cautious, you become paranoid. You don't just guard your feelings, you attack first. That's the mechanism doing its job with broken inputs, trying to protect you by pulling all the levers at once. It's like steering a car with the emergency brake on. You make jerky turns, slam on imaginary brakes, drive half the speed you're capable of, and all the while you call it being careful. It's not careful, it's overruled. Some scars don't show up as pain, they show up as nothing. Numbness, emotional flatlining. You stop feeling joy, sadness, empathy. You call it stoicism or strength, but it's really shut down. The system got hurt enough times that it decided to run cold. To minimize risk, it deadens sensation. But numb isn't neutral, it's a defense state. And while it protects you from acute pain, it robs you of feedback, connection, and vitality. You stop bleeding, sure, but you also stop pulsing. Hiding the wound doesn't heal it. Time doesn't fix trauma, interpretation does. If you don't reprocess the scar, it keeps signaling the system to protect something that no longer exists. Pretending it didn't happen just pushes the pain deeper, where it becomes untraceable. Healing requires exposure, not confession, not wallowing, just truth. You name it, you feel it, you watch it lose power, then you give the mechanism something new to organize around. You can't delete memory, but you can rewrite imagery. You can reimagine the event, not with delusion, but with new emotional context. You place yourself back in that scene, but stronger, louder, wiser. You intervene, you stand up, you respond differently. And the mechanism, gullible and brilliant as it is, begins adjusting to that version. Because it doesn't track time, it tracks intensity. It believes what it sees. So show it something better. Forgiveness isn't sentimental, it's surgical. It's what removes the infected scar tissue. When you forgive, you're not saying it was okay, you're saying it's over. You're cutting the emotional tether that keeps replaying pain in your system. You don't forgive for morality, you forgive for functionality. Because holding on to the wound means feeding your servo mechanism distorted data every day. You think you're staying alert, you're staying trapped. A healthy system doesn't overreact. It calibrates. It doesn't flinch. It adjusts. Emotional health isn't about smiling through the fire. It's about seeing clearly through it. No distortions, no ghosts, just now. That's what healing gives you. You don't become invincible. You become accurate. You feel when something's wrong, but you don't spiral. You speak the truth without dragging in the entire archive of past pain. You move not as a reaction, but as a choice. When Maltz talks about an emotional facelift, he's not being poetic. He's pointing to a change in how you present to yourself and to the world. When the scars fade, your expression softens, your posture shifts, your voice steadies. The system stops anticipating pain and starts expecting contact. people see you differently, not because you've masked the past, but because you've rewritten the script it was using. This isn't cosmetic. It's core identity, restructured. And once that changes, everything else gets easier. You're not hiding, you're buried. The real you hasn't vanished, it's been layered under years of shrink-wrap survival strategies. You call it being careful, being humble, being reserved. But it's not your nature, it's your armor. You've been distorted by reactions to shame, punishment, correction. The bright, loud, strange parts of you were edited out for approval. The system adapted, sure, but now you mistake the adaptation for the original. That's not repression. That's over-editing. Your personality didn't disappear. It's just waiting to be unmuted. Self-consciousness isn't just annoying. It's a full-scale performance killer. It takes your attention and turns it inward where it doesn't belong. You start monitoring every word, every twitch, every tone shift. You become both actor and critic. The moment you try to observe yourself being natural, you kill the signal. The servo mechanism needs trust to operate, and trust evaporates when you're busy rehearsing the reactions of an invisible crowd. You're not nervous because you're flawed. You're nervous because you won't get out of your own line of sight. Your personality isn't something you build, it's something you release. It doesn't need to be invented, it needs room to breathe. You've already had moments where it slipped through. You forgot to be careful, you laughed too hard, you said what you actually thought. And in those moments, people leaned in. Not because you were polished, but because you were present. That's the real self, not the polished version, the one that's too busy living to look in the mirror. Inhibition isn't temperament, it's a defensive strategy. It says don't risk expression, don't risk exposure, don't risk being real. It's the firewall built after rejection, correction, humiliation, and it works for a while. It keeps you safe, but it also kills spontaneity. And it feeds the lie that you're awkward, reserved, shy. You're not. You're just highly trained in suppression. The cure isn't to force extroversion. It's to stop obeying the internal alarms that scream every time you're about to say something true. The moment you try to control how you're perceived, you fracture. You split your attention. One eye on the moment, the other on how it's landing. That split collapses the whole structure. You start packaging yourself into acceptable pieces. You second-guess the tone. You soften the edge. You become invisible by degrees. And then you wonder why no one really sees you. The real personality can't show up in costume. It shows up when you stop staging the scene. Most people kill their own creativity in the edit bay. The impulse to speak, move, decide, it fires. But before it can reach the surface, it's judged, filtered, modified. The result? Polished nothing. You don't need better thoughts. You need less judgment between signal and action. Say the thing, miss the mark, trust the first draft. The servo mechanism sharpens through use, not hesitation. You don't build spontaneity by thinking. You build it by letting. The real self emerges in states of relaxed concentration, playing a song, fixing something, telling a story. These are moments when you're too engaged to self-monitor. The conscious mind is busy, but it's not interrupting. That's the sweet spot. When you're present enough to act, but not tense enough to second guess. You can't brute force this state, but you can design for it. Build more moments into your life where you forget yourself. That's where you'll find yourself again. There is no finished version of you waiting in the wings. No perfectly formed identity ready to debut once you're ready. You find it by doing. You find it by speaking before you're sure, by laughing too loud, by saying something messy. That's how the system learns. Expression calibrates over time. Every honest moment adds weight to the real personality. You don't figure out who you are in your head. You stumble into it while talking with your guard down. You don't need more self-discovery. You need less self-interference. Authenticity isn't found. It's what's left when the pretending stops. You can't dig your way to it. You strip your way to it. Remove the scripts, the rehearsals, the imaginary judgments. Remove the mental voice that narrates your every move like a cynical sports commentator. The real you is what speaks when that voice takes a nap. Self-expression isn't a feeling, it's a behavior. You don't wait until you feel free. You build freedom by moving while nervous, speaking while unsure, showing up before you're polished. Freedom is a skill, a habit, a posture. Every time you act without censorship, you install a little more of your actual self into the system. Do it enough times, and one day, you won't even notice that the brakes are gone. You'll just be moving, speaking, creating, and calling it normal. Peace of mind isn't a reward, it's a requirement. Your system doesn't need serenity for spiritual reasons. It needs it for function. The servo mechanism can't lock onto a target while the screen is shaking. It can't execute fluid movement if the gears are grinding with anxiety. Calm is clarity. Clarity is performance. You don't wait for peace after the work is done. You generate it to make the work possible. You can manufacture tranquility. It doesn't require a vacation, a new job, or a solved life. It requires internal levers, slow breath, intentional focus, reframed thought, small movements. The brain listens to signals. Show it safety and it will stand down. The storm inside you isn't mystical, it's mechanical, and that means it's modifiable. You want calm? Build it. Forget the myth that stress equals progress. Tension isn't noble, it's noise. The whole hustle culture obsession with panic is miswired dopamine addiction. You're not sharper when you're stressed, you're clumsier. You're not braver under pressure, you're just too numb to recognize the cost. Calm isn't laziness, it's optimal load bearing. It's signal without static. Emotions don't need to be killed, they need to be witnessed. When you observe anger or panic without reacting, the spell breaks. You're not the feeling, you're the one seeing the feeling. That separation doesn't numb you, it empowers you. It's how you ride the wave without drowning in it. You don't need to fight the storm, just stop mistaking it for yourself. Perspective interrupts panic. The moment you detach, even slightly, and treat your thoughts like someone else's, you dilute their control. Interesting, I'm feeling rejected. That sentence is a tranquilizer. It puts you in the observer seat. From there, the system starts recalibrating. Panic needs immediacy to survive. Distance weakens it. Your breath is the steering wheel of your nervous system. Long, slow, deliberate inhales tell your body, we are not under threat. That signal cascades, lowered heart rate, loosened muscles, sharper cognition. It's not placebo, it's physiology. Shallow, rapid breaths train the system to panic. Deep, even breaths train it to operate. You want performance? Start with oxygen. don't need to empty your mind. You need to slow it down. Replace the flood of worry with a stream of intention. Don't aim for silence. Aim for rhythm. One thought at a time, repeated, anchored. That's what the mechanism can work with. Not 1,000 tabs open, just one clean window with a task in front of it. That's when things start clicking. Peace thrives on ritual, not because ritual is sacred, but because the system learns through rhythm. A quiet morning, a walk without your phone, 10 deep breaths before work. These aren't luxuries, they're reset commands. They train the nervous system to release. Over time, these moments become anchors, signals to let go, and letting go becomes habit. The mind panics when it sees problems as attacks. It calms when it sees them as process. You're not being punished, you're being prompted. Challenge is neutral. It's your interpretation that adds heat. Reframing shifts the energy from threat to curiosity. From "I can't handle this" to "what's the next move?" That shift doesn't just change your attitude, it changes the way your system processes everything that follows. In a frantic world, calm becomes leverage. It lets you think when others react. It keeps your hands steady when others flinch. It gives you range while they're stuck in reactivity. Calm isn't passive, it's strategic. It's the posture of someone who knows their system is tuned, aligned, ready to respond, not out of panic, but out of clarity. And that's power. Crisis is clarity in disguise. It looks like collapse, but it's actually compressed information. Something about your current model is broken, and the universe just forced the update. That's what crisis is, a mismatch between what you believed and what reality just shoved in your face. Most people personalize that mismatch. They think it means they are broken. But the system isn't punishing you. It's giving you data, fast and loud. If you stop taking it personally, you can start listening. Panic is the real failure state, not the crisis itself. The storm passes, the loss fades, the screw-up gets absorbed, but panic distorts every input, scrambles the radar, and forces you into knee-jerk loops. Panic turns temporary turbulence into long-term damage. It's the internal reaction that corrupts the mechanism. You don't need to suppress fear, you need to contain it. You need to keep the signal clean enough to steer through the dark without slamming the controls. Your interpretation of the crisis is more powerful than the crisis itself. Same event, different story, two different outcomes. One sees it as confirmation of worthlessness. The other sees it as the breakdown that reveals the next door. Your mechanism responds to your story, not the facts. You think the event determines your future. It doesn't. The frame does, and you're the one holding the frame. Crisis burns off the fake. That's its gift. It strips away who you were pretending to be, what you were afraid to question, the fragile identities that only worked under low pressure. You think you're falling apart, but what's actually happening is subtraction. What's false gets cracked, what's real holds. And once the ash clears, you're left with something that can't be shaken as easily. You're not being destroyed, you're being revealed. Pressure can collapse you or refine you, depending on how you engage it. The servo mechanism, under stress, accelerates its recalibration if the signal is stable. Crisis tightens the focus. It kicks out the distractions. If you're present, the system starts running lean, smarter, sharper. The key is not letting panic interrupt the upload. The more you can stabilize internally, the faster your system learns. You don't think your way out of crisis. You move, even if the motion feels stupid, shaky, or small. Action is a pattern disruptor. It cuts the loop. It introduces new input. The mechanism needs movement to recalibrate. Sitting in analysis is gasoline for the spiral. Do one thing, then another. Walk, speak, build, reach out, write, fix. Motion tells the system we're not stuck, and that's when the lights start flickering back on. Crisis activates the builder in you. It flips on parts of the brain that weren't being used when life was smooth. Creativity, resourcefulness, adaptability, all these traits are latent until stress forces them online. That's the hidden gift. You don't become someone new. You access someone who was dormant. Crisis doesn't invent your strength. It reveals the backup files you didn't know were running. Post-crisis you is different, sharper, quieter in the right places, louder in the ones that matter. Because crisis tests not just what you can endure, but how you respond after you get back up. And when you rebuild after impact, your confidence is earned. It's not positive thinking anymore. It's something in your bones. People who haven't been cracked don't know what they're made of. You do. That's why you walk differently afterward. The goal was never to live crisis-free. That's fantasy. Life will destabilize you. People will leave. Plans will fail. The map will stop making sense. And when it does, your servo mechanism isn't broken. It's waiting for new input. Crisis isn't the end of the system. It's the test of whether it was running on truth. And if it wasn't, good. Tear it down. Build something stronger. The system is learning every time you fall. Give it something better to aim at. The biggest mistake people make is waiting to feel like a winner after they win. That's backwards. The servo mechanism doesn't respond well to hesitation and doubt. It responds to tone, posture, readiness. When you show up already carrying the feeling of success, when your system believes you belong before the results confirm it, performance sharpens. Ideas come faster. Movement feels cleaner. The system locks in. You don't earn the feeling, you install it. Your nervous system is impressionable. It doesn't distinguish between real and vivid. That's the trick. Vivid imagination paired with authentic feeling activates neural pathways as if the event were actually happening. You picture yourself speaking clearly, landing the pitch, lifting the weight, and if the image is sharp enough and the emotion real enough, the mechanism begins building toward it. That imagined win becomes a legitimate rep, one your system remembers. You're already rehearsing something every day. Most people just don't realize it's doom. They imagine the embarrassment, the awkward pause, the rejection, the flop. That's training. Just the wrong kind. The servo mechanism doesn't judge. It practices whatever you give it. So if you want it to guide you to something better, stop feeding it fear and start feeding it flow. Confidence is just a well-rehearsed nervous system. You've got to interrupt the bad loops and replace them with cleaner ones. That winning feeling isn't about bravado or ego. It's readiness. It's the internal signal that says, systems green, no threats, full capacity available. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you respond under pressure. You stop bracing for impact. You stop shrinking in advance. The whole system opens up. Muscles loosen, eyes sharpen, language lands better. Your system believes it's safe to perform, so it does. You've felt it before. The time you nailed it, surprised yourself, stood taller. That moment you handled something you thought would break you. Those are your training clips. Pull them up, rewatch them in your head. Not just the facts, the feeling. Let it fill your chest again. Re-anchor it. Your body remembers. Your system can be taught to return to that state on command. That's not nostalgia, that's programming. Now project it forward. See yourself winning, specifically, physically, vividly. But don't just watch the movie, feel it. Calm breath, steady hands, words that land, a body that moves without friction. This isn't about fantasy. You're not daydreaming, you're writing code. The servo mechanism adapts to these inputs. It starts looking for ways to fulfill that picture. It begins closing the gap between simulation and real-time performance. Practice the feeling, not just the tasks. Don't obsess over the finish line. Train your system to live in the emotional state of success now. That state, relaxed confidence, clean focus, open posture, that's the real fuel. Do it often enough, and the mechanism stops waiting for evidence. It assumes this is normal, and once that feeling is normalized, you start acting like someone who wins, even when nothing around you has changed yet. Winning isn't an event, it's a frequency, a tone your system gets used to carrying. The more you install that tone through memory, rehearsal, posture, breath, the more the world starts treating you like it's true. Because you'll speak differently, you'll hold space differently, you'll move through doubt without needing it to vanish. That's the shift. Winning becomes internal, and the results become inevitable. Aging doesn't begin in the joints, it begins in the imagination. The moment you stop picturing futures, stop aiming at new terrain, stop reinventing yourself in some small way every day, that's when the decay begins. You can keep your heart beating and still be fading. The servo mechanism doesn't know you've celebrated another birthday, but it knows when your input's slow. It knows when you stop seeking, and it knows when the system starts powering down, not out of necessity, but because you told it to. Vitality isn't a year count. It's a temperature, a charge, a forward-leaning voltage inside the system that says we're still playing. There are people with 40 winters in their bones who move like firecrackers, and others half their age who move like closing doors. The difference isn't biology, it's investment. It's the energy you put into each hour. The way you look at a day and say, let's see how much of it I can taste. Youth isn't lost with age, it's lost with surrender. The absence of goals is not peaceful, it's corrosive. A system without aim begins running low-priority maintenance routines. It conserves, it idles, but give it a new goal and the engine wakes up. The cells respond, hormones shift, brain chemistry reroutes. You are not a candle slowly burning out. You are a machine that responds to demand, no output. Set a goal, any goal, and the mechanism sharpens in response. That's how you generate time, by giving it something to do. Curiosity is the ultimate youth serum. You follow it and the system perks up. It leans forward. It forgets how old it's supposed to be. It starts thinking in terms of what if and what next instead of remember when. That shift matters. When you're curious, your eyes widen. Your brain floods with dopamine. You stretch toward possibility. Curiosity doesn't care about your birth date. It cares about whether you're still listening, still wondering, still awake. Self-image seeps into flesh. Call yourself old enough times and your gait changes. Your tone drops, your spine curves, not because of age, but because of identity. The servo mechanism hears your language and adjusts posture, chemistry, and mood to match it. When you say, "I'm still in it," the system keeps moving forward. But when you say, "I'm tired of the fight," the body believes you. Be careful what you call yourself. Your cells are listening. Play is recovery. Play is recalibration. Without it, the system rusts in the joints. When you stop playing, stop dancing, teasing, tinkering, laughing, you start solidifying. The mechanism becomes overly serious, brittle, prone to fracture. Play reminds it that life is not just problem solving. It's not just deadlines and bills and caution. It's risk with joy, motion without outcome. That's what keeps the wires loose and the fuel burning clean. Fear of aging is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The moment you dread decline, you begin organizing your behavior around it. You slow down preemptively. You excuse disengagement. You start interpreting every ache as an omen. The servo mechanism adapts. It says, I see. We're preparing to exit. And it begins powering down. You don't need to lie to yourself. You need to stop sending the system the signal that it's already over. The past is powerful, but it's not home. People get lost in nostalgia because it's emotionally rich and predictable. But living there means freezing the system. Memory should be mined, not lived in. Use it to remember what you're capable of, what you survived, what you dared. Then redirect that energy into now, into next. You're not a photo album, you're an evolving project. And every memory can be turned into fuel if you stop treating it like a destination. Static identity is death by comfort. When you stop updating who you are, stop surprising yourself, you become easy to predict. The servo mechanism gets bored. It runs low-level scripts instead of full-force adaptations. You're not meant to settle into a character and repeat it until the credits roll. You're meant to change the script, add new layers, subtract old roles, confuse people, rewire yourself mid-sentence. That's what vitality feels like. Flexible identity, endlessly refined. Living fully isn't a mood. It's a method, a daily refusal to shut down, a decision to participate while the world tries to sedate you with routine. You build more life into your years by refusing to go dark while still breathing, and you do that through small practices. Curiosity, motion, laughter, challenge, newness. The mechanism doesn't need a new body. It needs a new input stream. Give it one and it will meet you halfway, maybe even more than halfway. And that's it. You made it. All 15 chapters of Psycho-Cybernetics, reimagined, reignited, and rewired straight into your system. If you got value from this, like the video, drop a comment and make sure you subscribe. I'll be watching. I want to know, which of these ideas hit hardest, and which one are you ready to install right now, like code? You have a mechanism that responds to the signals you feed it. So here's the big question. What will you make it believe next?